week, Chevrolet presents a story based on the actual experiences of American clergymen, pastor, priest, or rabbi. The men who give inspiration and guidance to people at the crossroads of life. These dramatic stories are presented with the cooperation of our Board of Advisors, Captain Maurice M. Witherspoon, Father George B. Ford, and Dr. William F. Rosenblum. Tonight, The Sacred Trust, starring Brian Ahern in the story of Father Anthony Coleman.
Father Anthony Coleman, a Belgian, who, because he spoke many languages, was assigned by his Archbishop, John Carroll, to St. Peter's on Lower Manhattan. This section was the melting pot for the many nationalities that migrated to New York. He conducted services in German, in French, for those who understood only French, and in English. The message was always the same: one people, one country, and to his own charges, one faith, until he finally broke down the barriers that had divided the members of St. Peter's and achieved one congregation.
Father, I have to make a confession.
You are in trouble, my friend?
I know it's very late, but there is something I have to get off my soul.
It is never too late to minister to the soul. I will hear your confession.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Before I begin, I want you to swear that what I tell you here in the confessional, nobody else will know.
As a Catholic, you know that a priest is bound by his church and by his God to hold inviolate the sanctity of the confessional.
Father, I am a thief.
Whom did you rob?
Cooper, the jeweler. I had no part in the actual robbery. Two other men did that. But they brought me the jewelry to sell.
But you were a party to the theft. You would have shared in the gain.
Yes, Father. I never did anything dishonest before. My conscience won't let me rest. I know what I've done to Mr. Cooper.
You understand? Before you can obtain absolution, you must confess the whole truth, without reservation, and repent your sin.
I do repent it. And I want to confess the whole truth.
I am listening. Mr. Cooper?
Why, good day, Father. I'm sitting here trying to figure out the extent of my ruin. $28,000 in diamonds and jewelry. Most of it entrusted to me on consignment or for repair.
Will you examine the contents of this parcel?
Why, these are the pieces that were stolen.
I think you will find that nothing is missing.
But, Father, how... where did you get them?
Oh, let us say that having them returned to you is an act of God. It is better not to question the workings of providence.
But the police, when I tell them that my property has been returned, they'll want explanations. What shall I say to them?
There is only one thing you can tell them, the truth. Mr. Hawkins, I am sorry to have kept you waiting.
Officer Hawkins, Father, of the Municipal Police.
Oh, I have been rather expecting you, sir. That is, someone in your official capacity.
Then my visit doesn't come as an unpleasant surprise.
No, not at all.
It's about Mr. Cooper's robbery. He informs us that the stolen goods were returned to him by you.
I was very happy to be the means through which he recovered his loss.
How did they come into your possession, Father?
They were given to me by one of the participants in the theft.
Then you know the identity of at least one of the thieves.
Are you going to ask me to reveal his name, Mr. Hawkins?
Yes, sir, I am.
I am sorry.
It is my duty to inform you that you must communicate any information you may have to the police.
I cannot.
Then I must ask you to come with me, Father.
To prison?
No, sir. To talk it over with the prosecutor. A situation like this is a little beyond my depth.
Father, you're a good citizen, an outstanding figure in the civic and religious life of New York. And a good citizen should be anxious and willing to aid in the enforcement of law and order.
As a citizen or as a priest, if I were to learn of the commission of a crime, I would immediately report it to the authorities as a matter of duty. But to reveal anything imparted to me under the seal of the confessional is impossible.
In other words, Father, you regard yourself as a dual personality. Two men inhabiting the same body, the citizen and the priest. Strange, but I can see only one of you. Will you enlighten me? Where does the citizen end and your alter ego begin?
As a citizen, I am a man like any other man. As a priest, I am a consecrated instrument of God.
This fencing is getting us nowhere. I repeat my position. This is a civil and not a religious matter. You have knowledge concerning the identity of a person involved in the commission of a crime. I ask you now, officially, to reveal the name of that criminal.
I am sorry. I cannot.
Father, do you realize that under the statutes, you can be charged with complicity?
In what way?
Technically, you are an accessory after the fact. It could also be charged that you were a receiver of stolen goods.
Please, correct me if I'm wrong in my interpretation of the law, that such a charge cannot be sustained until the malice of the defendant is proven. His intent to commit or abet a crime, and that he cannot be so charged if he finds himself innocently involved.
So you are an authority on the criminal law as well as the ecclesiastical.
The laws of God and man are based upon the same precepts, Mr. Gardner. Justice and equity.
But there is one charge on which you can be held to account. That of being a material witness. I can take you before the grand jury on that count. Ask you the same question to which you must give answer under oath. What do you think of that, Father?
I think if you conceive that to be your duty, you should do it.
Secrecy is not holy, nor is the concealment of crime. A citizen must aid in the protection and safety of society. Therefore, I demand that Father Coleman answer the question I have put to him, or accept the penalty prescribed by law for refusing to answer.
Father Coleman, would you state your reasons for refusing to answer the assistant prosecutor's question?
Gladly. Mr. Gardner's question has a much greater significance than a mere attempt to force from me the name of one implicated in a theft. As the real question is, can a Roman Catholic priest ever be justified in revealing secrets transmitted to him as a part of the sacrament of confession?
I object to the injecting of religious polemics into these proceedings.
I think Father Coleman has a right to be heard in his own defense.
Thank you. Specifically, to answer Mr. Gardner's question would be to degrade myself in the eyes of my church. It would automatically strip me of all authority as a priest to perform any function of my church. It would inflict upon me the severest penance.
And I insist that that is not a valid excuse under the law.
The divine law was established long before the statutes of the state of New York.
Mr. Foreman, the witness must answer the question.
The hour of adjournment has arrived. We will continue tomorrow morning at the usual hour.
An election coming up in 6 weeks, and we're put in the enviable position of appearing like the persecutors of a Catholic priest, and through him of the whole Catholic Church.
This stupid performance before the grand jury must be stopped.
There's only one way it can be stopped, for the prosecutor's office to quash the proceedings.
Squash, whatever you have to do, stop it.
Father, I find your attitude not only surprising, but very unreasonable. We don't want to put you on trial. We never for a moment thought you to be guilty of an infraction of the law.
But you did summon me before the grand jury on definite charges.
I'm perfectly willing to ask for a dismissal of the case. After all, the stolen goods have been returned.
Would you base your motion for dismissal upon your opinion as assistant public prosecutor that what transpires within a Catholic confessional is a privileged communication, and that no priest may be required to divulge anything confided to him in such circumstances?
I can't do that. I'm not the law. I can't set a precedent. Only the courts can do that.
Exactly. That is why I want you to bring me into a court.
I can only tell you, Father, that this office does not wish to pursue the matter further.
Then I think it only fair to inform you that I intend to pursue it by every means possible until the public prosecutor's office does reopen the case and carries it to a decision.
Very well, Father. If it's a fight you insist on having, I'll do my best to accommodate you.
Thank you, sir. Good day, gentlemen.
Why does he go out of his way to stir up trouble?
Was it not you, Mr. Gardner, who put in the first spoon?
What's this?
My resignation. I'm going to offer my services to Father Coleman as his defense counsel. I believe in the merits of his case.
Father Coleman could not know that the lives of the informer and his wife also depended upon his obligation of silence as a priest.
Who's there?
We don't want you. We want you. Just be quiet. Nothing will happen to you. Martha? Martha! Martha! All right, we'll give you part of what we brought your husband.
If you want your husband to stay alive, you better make him go back to that Father Coleman. Tell him that if he knows what's good for him, he'll keep his mouth shut.
He won't talk to the police. He cannot. He's a priest.
Well, if he does, we'll finish him off, just like we'll finish you and your wife.
Will everyone rise? Rise, rise. Court of General Sessions in and for the state of New York, Borough of Manhattan is now in session. The Honorable Judge DeWitt Clinton presiding. You may be seated.
The case of the people of the state of New York versus Father Anthony Coleman. Are all parties concerned present in the court?
People are ready, Your Honor.
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
The people request that Father Coleman be called as the first witness.
You swear the testimony you are about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Will you state your name, residence, and occupation for the record?
Anthony Coleman, Society of Jesus, Catholic priest, rector of St. Peter's Church of Manhattan.
I am going directly to the heart of the matter involved, Father. On the morning of the 18th of April, 1813, you visited Mr. Cooper at his place of business and turned over to him a parcel which contained the articles of jewelry stolen from his store the night of the 16th of April, 1813.
Yes.
How did these stolen articles come into your possession?
In the absence of an objection on the part of the defense, the court will enter an objection for him.
If the court please, the defense has no objection to the question.
The court still makes note of the objection. You do not need to answer such a question, Father.
I would prefer to answer it, sir.
Very well.
The articles were given to me by a third party.
Under what circumstances?
As part of a confession heard by me in my church. I refused the penitent absolution until he had made full restitution of the stolen property.
But from the moment he gave them to you until you returned them to Mr. Cooper, the stolen articles were in your possession.
Yes.
And you were aware, and are now aware, of the identity of at least one of the thieves.
I do not think he was one of the actual thieves.
But he was implicated in the robbery.
Ah, yes.
What is the name of the party who gave you the stolen jewels?
Just a moment, Your Honor. As Father Coleman's counsel, I instruct him not to answer that question.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that any communication made to Father Coleman under such circumstances is privileged.
Cite me the ruling. It doesn't exist within the meaning of any precedent of law applicable in the state of New York.
Then this court should set such a precedent.
Mr. Gardner, do you object?
People are just as eager to argue that such a privilege does not exist.
The court will hear the arguments and will reserve for the moment a ruling on the validity of the question put to the witness.
Your Honor, from the beginning, the nature of these proceedings has disturbed me. They are of great moment. Which is why I resigned my office as public prosecutor and took upon myself the defense of Father Coleman when I am not even a communicant of the Catholic Church. Involved here is the right of a clergyman of any faith to be secure in the practice of his ministry. I will not discuss here the provisions of the Constitution which guarantee the right of every man to the freedom of his worship. They are too well known to Your Honor to warrant comment by me. Rather will I recall to the court that the right of privacy surrounding the nature of certain communications has been a tenet of the law since time immemorial. The early Romans held a priest to be apart from the application of the common law when acting within the province of his office. The Code of Charlemagne recognized a priest as something more than a private citizen in matters concerning the practice of his religion.
Can't we come down to the earth as we know it, the law as we practice it?
Yes, we can, Mr. Gardner, to find that the rule of privilege is not new to this court or to any other court since the earliest application of the English common law. For example, Your Honor knows that he is legally excused from divulging any knowledge that he may acquire in the exercise of his office as a judge. And you know, Mr. Gardner, that the law places its protecting arm about your shoulders when it declares that the lawyer-client relationship is privileged, and that, as an attorney, you cannot be made to divulge what transpires between yourself and the client. The law has also established the privileged communication between physician and patient. No doctor need fear being forced to testify as to what took place between himself and his patient if the physician-patient relationship is involved. The law strictly prohibits the testimony of husband against wife and vice versa. It holds that the law cannot inquire into what took place between husband and wife where such testimony might tend to injure or incriminate either.
Mr. Riker, I'm waiting for you to make your point.
Your Honor, if communication between lawyer and client, between physician and patient, between husband and wife, cannot legally be inquired into, how much greater is the privilege of communication between man and his God?
Mr. Gardner?
If it please the court, the argument of the people will be very brief and not so dramatically presented as that of the defense. The people contend that as a citizen, Father Coleman has obstructed justice in refusing to provide certain information having to do with the commission of a crime. Information which would lead to the arrest and conviction of the thieves. Now this is not theory, but fact. The robbery was committed. Father Coleman is implicated. He has refused to divulge his knowledge. Under the law, Father Coleman is entitled to no special privileges as a witness because of his priestly office. He is a citizen the same as any other citizen. Aside from any other implications inherent to the situation in which he finds himself, if he refuses to answer the question, he lays himself open to a charge of contempt of this court and to condign punishment therefore.
That is the people's argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Father Coleman, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question, not to be construed as having any direct bearing in this present case.
Yes, Your Honor.
If any court should instruct you to answer the question, would you comply?
I could not, Your Honor.
Even in the face of certain punishment for contempt?
Even in the face of certain death, Your Honor. I feel that if any priest would answer such a question, he would be eternally punished, far beyond the mere mortal end of the grave. He would condemn himself to everlasting damnation as a traitor to himself, to the sacred trust of his ministry, to his church, and to his God.
I would have been greatly surprised had you given me any other answer. After hearing the arguments, the court rules that the witness will not be required to answer the question. The court holds that any knowledge the witness may have pertinent to the issue raised within the people's complaint came to him in his capacity as an officiating priest, and that such communication is and should be privileged. Gentlemen of the jury, in the absence of any evidence or testimony to connect the defendant, even remotely, with any breach of the law, the court directs you to return a verdict of not guilty on each of the charges and allegations set forth within the people's complaint.
Yes, Your Honor. We would have done just that. We find the defendant not guilty.
Later, when the same judge, DeWitt Clinton, became governor of New York, he was instrumental in enacting a law into the statutes of the state of New York that the confidences between man and his God are inviolate. A law which grew out of the courage and convictions of Father Anthony Coleman.
Next week at this time, the Chevrolet dealers present another dramatic story based on actual experiences of American clergymen on Crossroads.